Hey guys, Roger here. I'm finally making the air tutorial that I told you guys I was gonna make like 2 months ago. So yeah, yay! Well, this is not the hairstyle that we're gonna be doing today. This is the kind of hair that I'm gonna teach you guys how to make, meaning that we're not gonna be jumping into particles or any other technique that you can utilize to make hair inside of Blender. So first, let's go over the options. What are the options that we have when it comes to making hair inside of Blender? First, we have the Bezier Curves, as you can see right here, and then we also have the paths. You can add them by simply pressing Shift A in object mode, then going over the curve menu, add Bezier Curve or Path Curve. Then what are the difference between these two? Why would you use one over the other? It's pretty simple. Bezier Curves, they offer a little bit more control, as you can see with these anchor points that you have right here. If you can rotate them and move them around, you can scale them up, down, change the sharpness of the curve, and it's very easy to get to many different shapes with just these handles. Of course, every now and then we're gonna want to add more anchor points, which you can do by selecting 2 points, right-clicking, and subdivide. If you're going to be doing this a lot, I recommend that you set a shortcut for the subdivide option. You can just right-click, assign shortcut. Let me just do this thing, assign shortcut, and then just add whatever shortcut that you want. In my case, I'm using Ctrl-D. You can choose whatever you prefer. Now, paths, on the other hand, they let me control back a bunch to get this back into place. Now, paths, on the other hand, they offer a little bit more quality. They come with more anchor points, and you'll see the difference between the qualities once we add thickness to them, but that's about it. The bad thing about them is that you can't rotate just one of them. You can see I'm trying to rotate, but nothing is happening. So if you want to get things like, for example, these kind of shapes, at that point then you're gonna need to move them up or down, or sometimes you're gonna need to add more points to get to that, which makes them a little bit more difficult to control, because the more points you have, the more things that now you have to move to get to the desired shape. Because then if you move these, you're gonna probably, if you want this curve to be a little bit smoother, you're gonna have to move them along, or you can just right click and then smooth, and little by little it's gonna be getting to that smooth shape. Now, what are these little legs and dots that these things have? If you don't see them, you can find them under, if you click over here, view per overlays, you can find them under handles. You can increase or decrease the length. This has no effect over your curve other than a visual effect. What they tell you, it's the direction the curve is supposed to go, and we'll see more about them a little after, once we add thickness, so you guys can see better what happens when you don't obey this line. This basically means that this is the start point of the curve and this is the end point of the curve. You want this point right here to be the first point that you place, and then you're gonna start adding and moving more points as the curve goes down, I guess. So now let's add thickness to them. What we do to add thickness to them is add another curve. This time it's going to be a circular curve. There's some things that you don't want to do when it comes to the circle curve. You want to rotate it 90 degrees, move it somewhere. The place doesn't matter. You want to move it somewhere that is going to be relatively close to your hair. You want to apply just the scale. You don't want to apply the rotation, you don't want to apply the location. You want to apply only the scale. Because otherwise, and I'm gonna show you soon, you're gonna have a little bit of a mess. So let's just apply the scale. And now let's go over here, select the curve, go over to Object Data Properties, and under Geometry, you're gonna see Bevel. You're gonna go to the Object tab, and you're gonna select the eyedropper tool. And click on the circle. There we go. See, now we have thickness. And the cool thing about this is that we can edit this shape to whatever we want. First, let me show you what happens if you apply all transformations. So if we apply the location, now you see that it goes a little bit bananas. Because now, like, the center point resets. and you can bring it back into place by going over to Object, Set Origin, and then Origin to Geometry, while having the circle path selected. And the other reason why you don't want to apply the rotation, it's because then it looks like this. And it's looking like this because remember, we rotated this circle at the very beginning. So ideally, it's easier, I guess. It's just easier to only apply the scale. Now let's give this a little bit of a different shape. You want to select your circle, go into edit mode by pressing tab, or just like there's multiple ways to get into edit mode. You can control tab and then go to edit mode. You can just tap and then go to edit mode, or you can click over here and then go to edit mode. So here I'm gonna introduce you, I guess, to a few other options. You want to rotate. I usually just like rotating these 45 degrees to either side, it doesn't matter. And then just scale it down on the Z axis a little bit, and you see, let me show you over here, and you see that the shape is already changing now. Now let's press the period key, and you can also get to that by clicking over here, which is the period key, which is the shortcut for that. And then I want to select individual origins and then scale it down. And then let's go back to medium point and scale it down. There we go. See, now we have a completely different shape. Now if you encounter this issue that the upper side is the bottom side on the curve, you can fix it quite easily. Just go back to object mode, rotate these 180 degrees, go back to edit mode, rotate it 180 degrees. And there we go. I'm gonna reset the origin to the center of the circle. I have that again. You can do it over here. Set origin object, set origin to geometry. I just have it on one of my mouse buttons, which I recommend you do as well. Not the mouse button thing, just pick a shortcut for that. It's gonna save you a lot of time. And now let me show you a little bit, a few other controllers for the curves and what I meant with the function these arrows have. So if I move these up and down, you see that nothing really changes on the curve. The problem now starts when we move the starting point. If we move it up and down, you see that the whole curve, it's being twisted a little bit. And the moment that we go past this point, it freaks out a little bit. And this is why you don't want to have this as your endpoint, because then every single time that you want to make an edit on the tip, then the whole curve is gonna freak out. So once again, try to have this enabled at the very beginning while you're laying down the hair. If you accidentally place the path in the wrong direction, don't worry, there's an easy fix for that. Just select the whole path curve. You can do it by pressing L over one of the vertex, go over to segments, and then switch directions. Now you see that it got a little bit twisted, and now this is where we jump into new controllers and new things that we can do to the curves. You can twist them if you want to put it back into place by pressing Ctrl T. You see that now we can twist the whole curve. You can do this with just one of the points if you want. You can do it with just two. Just keep in mind that it's gonna have a few deformations, so it's like you can get to cool shapes, but at the same time you don't want to go too crazy with them. Another cool trick is by using proportional editing with connected only enabled, is that you can twist them little by little. You can increase the radius of the proportional editing with while using your mouse wheel. And there we go. See, we can get these cool shapes if you want them at the end or beginning of the curve. If you want to taper the curves, just click on whatever point you want to do. Normally you're going to do this at the very beginning. Try to have proportional editing off for this, and then you want to do Alt S and then 0 to bring it down to a perfect point. You can do it by just Alt S and then moving left and right, up and down. Let's go over a few things. Starting points and ending points, you want to keep track of them. So just so you don't get weird, you know, deformations and twisting. Alt T to twist. Alt has to scale up and down. Remember that you can add more points by right-clicking and subdividing. And I think that's it. I think those are the basics when it comes to these. Now, let's say you want to use Bezier Curves, because they have more control, and then you run into this issue that it's very pointy right here when you try to scale one of the, like, the middle points up or down, because it's gonna happen the same. It's very sharp. It's a very sharp transition. Something that you can do for these, and this is something that I recommend you do regardless of the type of curve that you're doing, it's changing the resolution preview. If you go down for these, if you go down to maybe 3, let's say, you'll see that the overall quality of the curve goes down. If we move it up, you'll see that it goes up. I normally try to keep this between 3 and 6, but for Bezier curve, I normally just go for 3. Let me separate them. So, okay. So if you want to fix this issue, once again, just lower the resolution. Now go over the Modify properties and then add a subdivision surface. And now you see that it's much more smoother. So now you have a little bit more quality while having all the controls from the anchor points. And now if you want to have a little bit more control over the path and, you know, the path curve, what you can do is use proportional editing. Just press G to move the brush up or down, and you'll see the point up or down, and then you'll see that all the other vertices move along. This can be a little bit tricky, and as you can see, the moment that we get 2 of them closed out, these gets a little bit ugly. So try to keep that in mind. Try to be careful. Try to not go too crazy with the amount of points that you're using. And regardless, at any point, you can always just select one of the vertex points, go over to active spline, and then change the order if you want something sharper or smoother. Now the same thing that we did to lower the resolution, and let me show you over here what the difference was if I enable geometry. And let me put this back to 12. You'll see that it has way more edges, therefore the quality is going to be better, but it's going to be heavier. If you want to lower it, resolution preview 3 to 5, it's fine. For path, I normally use 4. The more prolonged these gets, like at the distance between 2 points gets, the more resolution that you want to have, because as you can see, this is stretching the loops. So add another one for better quality. And then go over here to our base shape. Let me put it down. And we can also lower the resolution of these. Okay, let's go to 3. Now it's much more cleaner. I normally go for 2 or 3 for the base shape. Let's go back to 0. Just because I like keeping things low at the very beginning, and then once I'm ready to render, then I fix and I add more if I need to. Another cool trick with the shape of the hair is that we are not limited to just these. We can add more hair strands. We can add a little bit more detail to these if you so want to, and at the same time you can also subdivide between the 2 of them. Scale these down, and as you can see over here, move up and down. Now the shape changes. So this is something that you want to play with to get that desired shape, the shape that you may need for the hairstyle of the character that you're going for. You can create longer hair, wider, I guess, hair strands if you want, like by just duplicating these. Let me delete these vertices just so it's not as heavy. And as you can see now, it's much wider. Okay, so now let's actually add hair to a character, so you guys see a little bit of the workflow. And we'll go over everything once again. Let's add a curve, let's add a path. I'm gonna use paths for the example. You can use whatever you want. Once again, both are perfectly valid. So try both, experiment with both. I always end up using both of them actually. I never just stick to just one. One days I feel like I want a little bit more control, so I use Bezier. Other times I want a little bit more quality, so I go for path. Let me add a circle. this circle, let me rotate it negative 90 degrees. Scale it down, put it over here, and then just apply the scale. And now let me move this curve 90 degrees. As you can see, the arrows are pointing this direction, which means that this is going to be my starting point. Scale this down, put this over here, this here. Let's go over to the object data properties tab, go to object, click on these, and then select the curve. This is a little bit too thick. Scale it down. You don't want to move it around on edit mode, because then this will happen. Keep that in mind. If at any point you do this, once again, don't worry too much about it. If you move it out of place, just remember object, set origin to geometry. Let me change the shape. 5 degrees, hierarchy, individual origins, scale it down, go back to medium points, and then scale it down on the Z axis, select these two, scale it down once more. What's happening here? On the X axis, there we go. Make this a little bit wider. That was too much. Okie doke. Go back to the path, Alt S to taper, 0 to end it on a perfect point. Let's move things around once again. Scale it up. Scale this one down. Now here's a few, like this is gonna be completely up to you what you do. Sometimes, like I always do both. You want to separate the chunks of hair into different objects, so you don't have just one single object with just a bunch of paths. It can get a little bit frustrating to deal with. So in this case, since I want to go symmetrical for the side bangs, I guess, I'm going to make a duplicate of this by pressing Shift D, pressing P, and then separate. Go back into edit mode, rotate these right here, move this down. The only option that you have if you want to have a mirror is just add a mirror modifier. The problem with this is that you're not gonna be able to apply it. So if at any point you want to keep this as a curve, but also keep the other side because you want to apply it, as you can see, it's not gonna let me apply it. You can delete it, duplicate it, Shift D, right click, go over to mirror, and then X global, and it's right there. Don't apply all transformations, because otherwise this is going to happen and it's not going to be symmetrical anymore. Once you turn it into a mesh, convert to mesh, what you're going to want to do is make sure that the normals are facing the right way. So just press Shift N to recalculate the normals, and that's it. So let's go back to the mirror modifier. There we go. Another thing that I like doing is making multiple copies of the basic hair shape that I'm going to be using for different places of the spots of the hair, I guess. These ones, for example, I want a little bit thicker, so I'll just duplicate the basic hair shape that I have, make it a little bit thicker, move these two down, and then once again select the curve, go over to object data properties, remove the one that I have, and then select this one. Now we're back in business. There we go. Now, as you can see, I need more points over here. Just add one there. Twist it a little bit. Now let's go back to the front, bang, and duplicate it, rotate it, move it a little bit like that. And select everything again, duplicate it, move it over here, And duplicate once more. Go over here, rotate. Now, say you don't want to do these over and over and over again for the back of the hair. Perfectly fine. One thing that I started to doing a few weeks ago, and let me make a duplicate of this one for that. Let me add another path over here, rotating 90 degrees once more. Actually, 180, please. There we go. Because once again, I need the normals to be facing that way because this is gonna go down. All right, so say you want to add, I don't know, long hair in the back, but you don't want to add one, you don't want to add the chunks of hair one by one. One thing that you can do, show you, let me flip these over here. One thing that you can do, once again, go over to object data properties, bevel, object, select the curve. We're selecting the new one. One thing that we can do now, it's adding more. Remember what I told you earlier? Just add a few more, rotate them a little bit. As you can see, we're getting a little bit more cover over to the sides. Let's add another one over here. Maybe we don't want it to be symmetrical. Let's just make a different size. Put it over there. Let's make another one. Put it over there. Let's taper these down a little bit. Put it over there. And scale it down. Yeah, let's go like that. Let me add another one. Scale it up. Move it down. Let's duplicate it. Let's see if this is gonna work. Otherwise, I'm just gonna have to make a different shape, which is gonna be perfectly fine, but it works. So that's great. Let's select these three, rotate them a little. Nope, actually, let's keep that one like that. But maybe we can do a mirror for these. So once again, select the whole curve. Press P, separate. Go out to object mode, select the curve that you just separated, and then add mirror modifier. Now for this one, I do want to taper these points. And maybe scale them down a little bit. That. Then move it this way. Let me add another point there. And let's add another point there as well. Now, say you want to be able to control these, like all these chunks of hair, say you want to be able to control them one by one. Sadly, you're not going to be able to do that while the curve remains a curve. But once you're ready to apply, once you're ready to convert these into a mesh, something that I want to do is, let me select all these points, and then move it down, because I want a little bit more thickness for the back of the hair. And I do want to add another point over here, just to do that. Let's hide this behind. As you can see, the more you add, the heavier it gets. The more difficult it is to make clean transitions between the points. You want to be careful with that. You don't want to go too crazy with the amount of points that you're adding, because it can get tricky to control. Okay, so you want to be able to control all these chunks of hair one by one. Once again, you're not gonna be able while the curve remains a curve. Once you're ready, right click, convert to mesh, go over to sculpt mode or edit mode, whatever you prefer. I prefer going over to sculpt mode. Go over to facets, initialize facets by loose parts, and now each one of the chunks of hair, it's gonna become its own group. Go over to the elastic deform brush. This is my preferred one. You can use this one, the grab brush, if you want. I prefer going for this one just because the deformations are a lot smoother. Go over to the brush settings and then enable facets. And this is gonna allow you to move all the chunks of hair one by one. The bad thing about this is that you're not gonna be able to go back and edit this curve to change the profile of this curve. So it's just a very final edit that you want to do. You don't want to go into the stage at the very beginning because maybe you change your mind, maybe you still want to, maybe you want to change the shape of it. Maybe you want to, I don't know, make this a little bit more like that. So keep that in mind. You can do it. It's just try doing it at the very end. And yeah, that's basically how I make hair in Blender every single day. I'm sorry if this tutorial was a little bit too long, if it was a little bit too all over the place. I stream Monday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays over on Twitch if you want to ask me questions, if you want to see me work on models live. And yeah, hope to see you there. I hope the tutorial was useful for you guys. Once again, I'm sorry if it was a little bit too all over the place. And yeah, have a fantastic day and I'll see you next time. Hopefully not in 2 months or 1 month. I don't know how many weeks it's been. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you soon. So bye bye.